And guys, joining me live via Skype is People Senior Editor Charlotte Triggs to give us the latest. Now, Charlotte, thank you so much for being here. Let's dive into this. Some new information has been coming out about Kim Kardashian West's terrifying night in Paris. What really went on in that hotel? Can you give us what the latest developments are?
Yeah, last night we spoke to a source who gave us a totally visceral description of what happened. I mean, she was in bed asleep when these people busted into her room, and she heard them coming up the stairs, and so she tried to roll out of bed, and she was going to text her bodyguard to come home, but they found her and they took her phone out of her hand, they tied her up, they had the plastic kind of handcuffs and, put them on her, and with tape on top of that, and she was begging for her life, they actually taped up her face and threw her in the bathtub. And of course that, was a sign to her that they had intentions to kill her. She also thought that they might rape her. It was an absolute horrifying experience for her. But it really only took about 4 minutes. They were in and out. They knew exactly what they wanted, which was her diamonds. And, they took her phones and some cash that they found, for good measure. But then they were out of there. And, when she was able to actually get out of the plastic handcuffs and out of the tape, she went onto the balcony and started screaming. And her friend Simone Harouche was in a nearby room, and she actually heard Kim on the balcony screaming and decided to call Pascal, the security guard, who came rushing back to their side, of course, but by then the damage was done.
Yeah, it seems so shocking how precise things were, seemingly well planned. Now, Kim is currently in New York City. We've seen that friends like Jonathan Cheban, Lala Anthony, and of course her mom, Kris Jenner, all going into her apartment. How do you think that she is processing everything now, that a little time has passed? What do we know about how she's doing?
Yeah, a source told us that, every few minutes she'll burst into tears, and that people are under strict instructions not to talk to her about it, not to ask her any questions, that if she wants to talk about it, she'll bring it up. But, and they're not supposed to treat her like an invalid. They're just supposed to let her have her space and kind of, share what she wants to share. But, she is really an emotional wreck, and according to a source that we spoke to, she feels a little bit better that she's reunited with her children. That makes her feel better. She's got Kanye by her side. He will not leave her, even though apparently he wants to race over to Paris and take care of this himself. But everybody's there with her, and she does not want to be alone. She's actually terrified to be alone.
We know that Kim and Kanye are now back together. When exactly did they reunite? At the airport, or was it back at the apartment?
Yeah, by the time this had happened, it was very late in New York already. It was the middle of the night in Paris. So Kim had to give her statement to Parisian authorities, and then she actually got on a private plane and came back to New York. Kanye wanted to rush to her side, but there really wasn't time. So they reunited in New York, and they went to their apartment there. And of course, they were met by about 25 security guards. If you thought she had security before, which she did, now she's really got major security. And her mother, of course, met her there as well. And her children had been in New York. So she was reunited with him there, and, that really meant a lot to her to just be able to hold her children. Here she thought that, they weren't going to have a mother.
Yeah, it's so great that the kids were not in Paris at the time. Obviously, things could have gone very differently if they had been in that room, or, God only knows what could have happened.
Horrible.
One thing, though, a lot of people have been discussing is about the security and where Kim's security was when everything happened. We know that the bodyguard, Pascal, was with Courtney and Kendall at the time. Did Kim not have any other security on hand, or do we know of any other security at that location?
This is a luxury apartment hotel where a lot of major stars have stayed. Beyonce, Jay-Z, Jennifer Lawrence. Kanye had this apartment for years, and Kim apparently felt very safe in the apartment. So when her sisters were going to go to a nightclub, a lot of people have been getting groped in Paris recently. There have been a lot of prankster issues with Gigi, and Kendall has had her own issues. She felt that it was the right thing to do to send her bodyguard to protect them in the crowd. And so she didn't feel like it was a big deal because she was going to bed. She was going to lock the door and turn on the security system, and that was that. She did not have any security on the floor, and supposedly the Kardashians, they do have security that stays with them in the hotel, but in a room down the hall, not in the room that they're in. So I guess, like I've heard people say, she's not a head of state. She didn't really think that she needed to have someone in the room with her.
All right, now, Charlotte, we know one of the pieces of jewelry that's being reported as stolen is a $4 million ring. Do we have any idea yet if that could be one of Kim's engagement rings? We've seen a lot of, she was posting with the new ring and all that kind of thing recently.
Yeah, this seems like, a bit of a fateful moment. Just a couple months ago, he had given her this $4 million sort of step up engagement ring, an even bigger ring. Of course, they've been married for a while now. And she had definitely been enjoying it, flaunting it all over social media. People knew she was wearing it in Paris. She was not wearing it when she entered the house yesterday. She did not have any rings on her fingers. She was, without any diamonds or bling or anything like that. It appears as though that ring was the one that was stolen because the police gave a description of a $4 million ring that matches the description of the one that he had just given her. What happened to her real engagement ring remains to be seen. It seems as though perhaps, luckily, that might have been back home.
All right, now we all know the Kardashians, especially Kim, for basically putting everything about her life out there in the open for the public to see, whether it's reality TV, whether it's social media. How do you think this incident is going to affect the Kardashian sort of machine, if we could call it, the PR machine, and putting it all out there moving forward? Will they start to maybe become more private or restrictive about certain things?
It's going to be very interesting to see what happens because we spoke to an independent security expert who said that they absolutely targeted her because of her actions on social media, the flaunting of her wealth, and not only that, but showing exactly her locations in every single place she was in Paris. People were able to track her every movement because she told them where she was. They didn't even have to try. And of course, she's still going to get photographed by paparazzi and people will still be able to track her. But the one thing she could do is not like Snapchat alone in her hotel room and let people know that she's home alone. You know what I mean? However, of course, this is the essence of who she is. She is a woman who has built an empire on the image of being extremely wealthy and of, this kind of status symbol lifestyle and of, having this social media empire. So it's a real conundrum for her because that's sort of how she built her industry. She gets paid a lot of money for every tweet and every Instagram that she does. And, what does she do now? But if I were her, I certainly wouldn't ever want to tell anyone where I was again.
Sure, I know. It's certainly there's going to be at least a period of time where we see a little radio silence compared to what we normally see. But I do predict a lot of social media as always, and just a lot more security more regularly. Thank you so much, Charlotte Triggs, for talking to us this morning. We'll see how things continue to develop.